Hello and welcome to week 13 in Psychology Seminar as our semester is drawing to a close. Only 2 or 3 weeks left in most of my classes. Sometimes that last week is for final projects, so no new content, just a week to get that writing in. So we're getting to the end here. So I hope your other classes are going well. Please reach out to me if you're having difficulty with anything. I'm going to be doing a recheck to make sure you're all registered for next semester, and then we're going to be gliding into spring. So, or let's not forget the break that's coming up, or at least break from school. That'll be great for all of us. Okay, so this week we move into chapter 9, and chapter 9 actually is it's a review of kind of what I'm trying to do with this whole program. Now, I'm sure you've probably come to the conclusion that getting an associate's degree in psychology is only going to bring you so far in terms of the field of psychology. If you want to continue studying psychology, you will have to continue going to school. The jobs in psychology require more than just an associate's degree. Now, I say just, you're getting a lot packed in to these what would be your first 2 years of a bachelor's degree. And my hope is that what you've learned in this particular degree program is very useful throughout your career. Now, to that end, all of the courses in this program, why did I pick those classes? What do they mean in terms of a bachelor's degree and preparation for graduate school? And I want to tell you about that because it's work that was arduous. And to tell you the truth, I'm pretty proud of what's been put together for this program. The courses themselves that you see in the list of courses, the core classes, are the courses that appear most in all of the degree programs in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. That was my circle of evaluation. I looked at programs all over not all of them, there's a million colleges in Massachusetts, but all the ones in Maine, certainly a few in New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, even some others, and looked what does the first 2 years look like in a psychology degree. And those courses popped up all the time. History of Psych, not so much. That's been a favorite of mine. My program, I decided to put that in there. Sometimes it's called History and Systems or Systems in Psychology or, those kind of things, usually seen as an elective in those programs. But nonetheless, I think having a good historical background is a value system of mine that I bring to this program. But the others, they're all their abnormal social psych, those two options that you have. Those are like second place in terms of there. So I you had to have one of those. And then the elective courses are really for you to select to explore at this level what you want to do in your bachelor's degree. Now, so the evaluation of which classes I should look at in this and include in this program was a research project to look at what do other schools offer so that when you transfer to any one of those schools, pretty much everything is going to go over and fit the criteria for their classes. Now, couple other things that I did is the American Psychological Association publishes a manual for individuals like myself who are putting together a bachelor's degree. Now, I'm not putting together a bachelor's degree, but I used that document anyway to put together my associate's degree. And that document represents what does the American Psychological Association think you should walk away with after you take a degree in psychology. Those outcomes, okay? I took those outcomes and I looked at the assignments in my classes and I aligned the assignments. I often change the assignments in order to align with this document that outlines what you're supposed to get. Now, I took every assignment in every class and assigned it a category within one or more outcomes. But then I picked one within each category of outcomes to be the one I'm going to measure when it comes to evaluating how well this program has done in helping you achieve the goals that are outlined in that document. So I want to take a look at the Introduction to Psychology course book. Some of you might have this. This is the current 7th edition of this course book. And these are not aspects of the course book that you have to know, but I want you to be aware that they are in there and why you are going to come across them. So there's some front matter here in terms of, there's the index and how this course book works. All the course books are the same in terms of this particular section. Now, here comes outcomes alignment. Okay, and the first set of criteria are the alignment for the guidelines from the American Psychological Association. You can actually click to see that document that I used right there. Now, what follows here are areas of study such as knowledge base in psychology, and then the actual outcome. Describe key concepts, principles, and overarching themes in psychology. That goal is part of this general area of outcome. And you'll see that I've listed all of the aspects, everything that I want you to do in this course that relates to that particular outcome. But then one of them is in red. The one that's in red is the one I've picked as, the one I'm going to use to say, yeah, you got this. If you do really well on Chapter 1 quiz, the goals of psychology, then I'm going to say, cool. You described a key concept, principle, and overarching theme in psychology. This is across all the courses. Every course has a list of outcomes like this. So let's explore a little further here to get into some more of these outcomes. Go to the next page, and we see there's more outcomes within that specific domain. Develop working knowledge, that's Chapter 5, and all of these. Describe applications of psychology, personal change, special assignment. And then you get to the next area, scientific inquiry and critical thinking. And we have the correlation special assignment, interpreting psychological phenomenon, and it goes on and on. Sometimes it's not in the class. Look at build and enhance interpersonal relationships and adopt values that build community at local, national, and global levels. These are outcomes from the APA, but they're not ones that are addressed in this class. They may, however, be addressed in another class. In fact, I know they're addressed. Every one of these outcomes is addressed somewhere in this program. So that's the APA outcomes. Those are the ones, so kind of gives you a justification. I'm looking here, the information literacy paper for Intro to Psych demonstrates psychological information literacy. There are other assignments in the program that also demonstrate psychological literacy, information literacy, and the combination of those is what I use to assess how well the program did in teaching you this. Okay? Now, in addition to the APA outcomes, there's another set of outcomes, and this has to do with the governing board that regulates higher education. Now, those governing boards ask us to make sure that we are graduating individuals who are qualified to call themselves graduates. So it's keeping the bar up, making sure we're just not giving degrees out for nothing. There are all kinds of ways to measure that. And KVCC has a set of outcomes specific to, I'm not sure if it's even on the website anymore, but it used to call the educated person. What do we mean by that? What do we mean that everybody graduating from college from KVCC is going to be able to do and understand these certain things? While those are all good and they're all included in what I'm doing, I found them limiting. They were based upon a larger framework of outcomes. The ones for KVCC were based upon a larger framework of outcomes defined by the American Association of Colleges and Universities. This is an organization that looks at the very notion of what we're talking about. They look at What does it mean to have a college degree? Why should we have a college degree? What is the value to society other than you learn a profession? What is the value that you get from having an education? And they're actually called value rubrics. And the value is an acronym that stands for value added learning in undergraduate education. So it's generalized learning outcomes. What are you going to get out of this program because you took this program in general, not just psychology, but in general? And the outcomes are a little different. Some of them are related. Some of them overlap with APA outcomes. But in the next section in the course book, I introduce the value rubrics. So that's the symbol for them. The value rubrics stands for Value Added Learning Undergraduate Education. And here we see the areas. They're not as delineated, let's say, as the APA ones. These are just, we have civic engagement, creative thinking, the Chapter 16 assignment on mental illness, the critical thinking, personal change, special assignment. Then there's nothing for ethics and global learning in this class. Then we look, here we have integrative learning. The key one is the Chapter 10 emotional intelligence. But look, all of these actually, if you look under integrative learning, Chapter 3, Chapter 6, 9, 9, 9, 10, 10, 12, 12, 12, 12, 13, 14, personal change, all of these teach integrative learning, but I'm only looking at the Chapter 10 quiz for my sense of measurement. So if you ever have a question as to why I've developed an assignment in your class that's contained in the course book, go check out where it aligns. It might not be the key one. That doesn't mean it isn't important. All of these other assignments contribute to integrative learning. The run in red is just simply tells you which one I'm going to be using for measuring how well the program is doing. It's not measuring how well you're doing. How well you're doing is measured by all of these. How well I'm doing, I can't use them all, so I'm picking one from each category. I will tell you, doing this across 14 classes was quite a task. Currently working on a single document that actually displays that every assignment that has been aligned for assessment here in each one of these outcomes. There's 16 value rubrics, and there's 5 major areas within the APA outcomes, and have one single document that shows the parameters that I use to assess my program. So this is a work in progress. We're still working, with the limitations within Brightspace and not. So what do I want you to do? I want you to be aware that the program you're in has been created in such a manner that we're trying to meet standards. I didn't just make this stuff up. Well, I did, but I didn't make up everything about it in terms of my goals or what I was going to. I want you to look inside of your course book and look at some of the assignments that you've done already and see if it makes sense to you that where I've aligned them. Like you do a let's say you're taking an online class, there are discussions that are used to bring you to a particular outcome and whatnot, and kind of reflect about that. I want you to feel confident that this program was designed in that way. And so you can also critique it. You can also look and say, yeah, I did this assignment and you're aligning it over here, but I'm not sure what it has to do with that. And so I'm a team of one. I've run this by my peers, but I'm the one in charge of this. So it's always good to get some nice constructive feedback from the people I'm trying to impress, which is you. So that's Chapter 9's discussion. Okay, we'll talking more about Chapter 9 later next week. The special assignment, the reading of the Pinker book, we're up to discussion 5. We're up to part 5. And part 5 is a really kind of challenging part of this. And that is when we begin to look at things in a scientific manner, things can lose their sort of glow or their magical qualities to it. I want to speak to this first developmentally. There is a point at which children believe in things. They might believe in Santa Claus. They might believe in the Easter Bunny. They might believe in all those things. They may make believe or pretend play, and those things are very real to them. The imagination world. And then there's a period of time in which they, Piaget talks about it as concrete operational thinking, where they begin to understand that there's a physical world, there's physical limits to it, and those things tend to go away. And sometimes that can be very sad. That magical type thinking that we have in children, and they're growing up, and now they sort of lose that innocence, per se, and the real world is now burdening them. Now, we as adults can approach this the same way. We can approach things in the world, things that we're trying to examine with science, and we can say, hey, wait a minute. That's sacred. Don't touch that. When we talk about emotions, when we talk about connections with other people, when we talk about our spiritual lives, our religious lives, and if we start to subject those to science, we're almost fearful that you're going to take away the magic, the beauty of it. Now, there's two ways to think about this, both of them that I think are important. First is science is pretty magical. Understanding when you start looking at the actual functions within a cell, or when you start examining the factors that play into attraction with somebody else, or even when we look at the psychosocial reasons and purposes for getting together and worshiping, wow, there's such richness and beauty in that, even though we're starting to name things, and maybe we're making connections that seem to move away from the sort of essence of what those experiences are. If anything, science, whenever it answers a question, opens up 50 more. So we can often see in that, you can see the magic of depth going deeper and deeper into something, and still see things as beautiful, even though we're examining them through a scientific eye. The other way that we can think about that is it feels like we're reducing the experience of things, that by making them scientific, we're taking certain qualities away from that. Now, certainly I can see why that could play out. In my biopsychology class, the actual explicit intent, explicit meaning there's a chapter in the book that actually discusses the fact that the textbook is approaching all human experience from a biological perspective. Irregardless, everything is they're trying to explain everything biologically. It is simply setting the stage for what you can expect from that particular study. What we have the opportunity to do is to learn about these things so that we can put those glasses on and look at things through the lens of, let's say, biopsychology or evolutionary psychology, or we're going to look at things right at, just on social psychology and social interactions, and we can have an understanding of all those, and then other times in our day, we might take those glasses off and look at things in the way that we always have. Now, those, we're given the risk that when we see, when we look behind the curtain, we found that Oz was just a man with a machine, then the wonder of Oz dissipated. But the fascination with the man behind the screen was still there. The magic was just a reflection of that. What Pinker is talking about in this particular chapter is our reluctance to move down the path of making things understandable because of that fear that it's going to lose its magical quality. It's placing that on the table for us to contemplate. And what I want you to think about is your own explorations of knowledge and how they interact with your biases, your belief systems, and all that stuff. And how do we manage that? How do we live in a scientific world, give it its due, and at the same time also experience the wonder of this creation at the same time? And this is, I'll admit, This is something that I've struggled with personally, and then have really come to a good place with this in terms of where does science fit in my own world, and how does it fit in the big conception of things. And I talk about putting science glasses on all the time. I don't have to keep them on all the time. I have to keep them on when I'm teaching classes. But then, there are times in my life when I don't look at things scientifically. However, that scientific perspective has shaped the way I view the world for the better. No doubt. And I'm totally in agreement with Pinker that regardless of our fear, these are steps that we need to take on the responsibility that we have of making the world a better place. So, big introduction to that particular chapter. I'll let Pinker tell you about it. Make sure you read that part of the book. And we're getting to the end of this special assignment project too. We're not going to complete the book. I made it a point. This is thick reading. This is dense reading, as I'm sure you've encountered. So we don't necessarily have to cover it all, but that's where we are. So chapter 9, again, looking at the outcomes assessment, sort of the nuts and bolts behind the creation of this program, and discussing that. And then the second discussion, part 5 of our special assignment, looking at the fear that we might have that science makes things a little cold and reduces their bright shine and magic, which I don't believe it does. That's the place I've come to, is I don't believe it does that at all. And so let's discuss this. So great philosophical discussions here are going on in the class. We are nearing the end. The end, I'll say it the other way. The end is near. The light is at the end of the tunnel. End this course strong. We have 2-3 weeks to go with all of your classes, and then we get a little bit break from learning, and then we can come back refreshed in the spring. So I look forward to these discussions, and do have a great week. So I'll take care.